What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews. We've got a 12 game slate coming up, and I'm going to share with you three of the bets that I've already got down. We're also going to do Daft's deep dive. We're going to go through every single game. We hit on the key players. We'll go through the matchups. We'll talk about their form. I'll tell you what I like, what I don't. And I do all this to give you all the information that you need to make the best bets possible. Now, if that sounds interesting, let's go. So we're jumping into props madness. This is the best tool that you can find specifically for the NBA. It's got all the advanced data. It's got a lot of things that no other app has. And honestly, all the best cappers online are using this right now. They may just not be telling you. Now, if you're interested in checking this tool out, I do have a 7-day free trial in the video description below. I'm also the only person on YouTube who can give you a discount. So make sure you use the code DAFT when you sign up and you'll get 25% off. So before we get into Daft's deep dive, I'm going to take you through three of the picks that I've already landed on. I've already placed my bets, so let's talk about it. The very first one I want to go through is on my man from Toronto. Where's the Raptors game? We're looking at RJ Barrett in this one. Here it is, last game of the day. So for RJ Barrett, usage rate this season has been insane. No Scotty Barnes, no Emmanuel Quickley. My man's been feasted. Emmanuel Quickley is a game time decision, but extremely doubtful to play. So I don't expect him to play in this one, which means we're going to see a whole lot of RJ Barrett action. Now, if Quickley is ruled in, this bet gets a little bit difficult, but I do like it, especially at the line that it's at. And I'm looking at it over in his rebounds plus assists. And you can see it on the graph right here. Whole lot of green. Your boy's averaging 13.6 rebounds plus assists this season. Now it's up against the Sacramento Kings, and he's played the Sacramento Kings only 4 or 5 days ago. And in that game, he had 15 rebounds plus assists, 16 rebound chances, 14 potential assists. He finished with 9 rebounds and 6 assists. This has been a line that he's been covering pretty much the whole season. So he's absolutely murdering it at 11.5. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't be surprised to see this at 12.5 by the time this game starts. Now, if we talk about the Kings for a minute, first thing, when you talk about pace, they play somewhat fast, middle of the league, which is nice. A lot of opportunities. But if we also think about how they defend his scoring type, and this is why I think he gets the assists off. If you look at his points real quick, RJ Barrett scores at the rim and he scores above the break, scores in the pick and roll, scores in transition. The Sacramento Kings, very good at defending both of those. And if you think about the shot zones, they're extremely well at defending the rim. So RJ Barrett probably going to be forced to pass a lot more than he once did. I know he scored 31 points the last time he played the Kings, but he took 26 shots in that game. I don't think that type of volume is something he can maintain. If he puts up 26 shots in this game, I'm an absolute idiot, but I don't think he does that. I think he relies on the playmaking, which he has been doing quite well. If you just look at his assist line on its own, it's at 5.5. He did have 6 assists in that last game against them, 14 potential assists, but he has been rattling off the assists like crazy. If you look at his rebounds, he's been pretty consistent. The line at 5.5. Would I take that? Probably not. But the combination of his rebounds plus assists, give me that. He did have 9 rebounds against them last time. A bit of an outlier, I would say. But the Kings, they do rely on a lot of outside shooting, longer rebounds for someone like RJ Barrett. So his rebounds plus assists is ultimately what I landed on. I just love the production he's been given. And 11.5, when he's been averaging 13.6, give it to me. If you do find out that Emmanuel Quickley is playing, though, I probably wouldn't bet this, but I'm pretty much betting on Emmanuel Quickley not to. So that's the very first pick I wanted to share with you guys. The next one is an under. And where's my Atlanta Hawks? So Atlanta Hawks versing the New York Knicks in this game. And we're looking at Clint Capella here. And I'm taking it under in his rebounds plus assists. So loving this rebounds plus assist market right now. But check this out. Line's at 9.5 right now. He's averaging 7.5 rebounds and assists this season. He's coming up against the Knicks, who allow the second fewest rebounds. So Clint Capella is going to bust this line open. It's going to be around rebounds, right? It's not getting a whole lot of assists anyway, but the assists give us an extra buffer. Now, looking at his rebounds plus assists, firstly, his rebound line's at 8.5. We take the assist one because I don't think he gets an assist in this game. But rebounds plus assists here for Clint Capella. 7.5 is an average this season. As I said, the Knicks' second fewest rebounds allowed. They play at a really slow pace as well. When that game's slow, it's a little bit harder to rack up some stats. Another thing that I like about this play, Onyeka Okongwu's back. Larry Nance is part of the rotation. Yes, they probably take some minutes from each other, but given Cat plays a lot of basketball outside. They can probably afford to play small. If he's playing on the perimeter, Clint Capella's got to defend the perimeter. He's not going to be in the best position to grab some boards. So I do like the under here on Clint. If we look at the last couple games, 17 minutes, 21 minutes, the minutes they've been declining. And as they get more reinforcements in that front court, I think we see less Clint Capella here. I don't think he's on there long enough in order to get 9.5 rebounds. The spread, 7.5. So there's also an opportunity for a blowout here. The Knicks, if they can come out firing, Clint Capella probably doesn't see much court time. So I do like his under. And the last one that I'm looking at here is, where is it? Denver versus OKC. And I had two different thoughts on this one. I was going to go with Nikola Jokic. This was a lean. I was going to bet he's under in his PRA, which is brave because he's been killing it lately. But it's a 7-point spread for OKC. Jamal Murray's still out for this game. I don't think the Denver Nuggets can hang with them. If there's a blowout here, Nikola Jokic not going to get close to this line, regardless of how good he's playing. But instead, I just thought I'd go on the other side. I'd prefer to bet an over than an under, to be honest. So I went with Chet Holmgren. And the two plays I was considering, well, one was his points plus rebounds. He absolutely destroyed Denver earlier this season. 25 points, 14 rebounds. His line here is at 27.5. He has gone under that a lot as of late. Now, that's easily explained. Up against the San Antonio Spurs, only played 28 minutes in that game. They won by 12. This game against the Blazers, they won by 23. He only played 18 minutes. Against the Clippers, they won by 13, 29 minutes, and only played 22 minutes against Orlando. That's another blowout win. Now, you're probably thinking, what if they blow out the Nuggets? Well, the Nuggets are probably good enough to keep it somewhat close, especially for the first three quarters. I think the OKC Thunder can run away with it. And if Chet's going to be productive, he's going to get a lot of that done early. Another thing you could do to explain the poor form in his last couple of games is purely by looking at matchup. So far this season, Chet is scoring a lot of points in transition. And the teams he has faced, pretty good not fucking placed, my goodness. The teams he's faced, pretty good at limiting transition, but what they're really good at, and you can see it in this graph, is how they defend the restricted area. So this blue line, it's pretty much calling out the defense to the shooting zone that he mostly scores his points in. And for Chet, it's right under the basket. And we can see in the first three games of the season against Denver, Chicago, and Atlanta, all of these teams, pretty soft under the basket. Then came up against the Spurs and Wemby. They ain't giving shit up. The Portland Trailblazers with DeAndre Ayton, very good at limiting points down low. So are the Clippers with Zubac, and then so are the Orlando Magic. All very difficult matchups that don't let a lot of points in the paint, where he's up against the Denver Nuggets again, and you can see it in this blue line. It's an excellent matchup for him to score some points. So I think he scores a lot of points. A lot of centers have been rebounding extremely well against Denver this season. If Westbrook's taken 5 3-pointers a game, that's 4 easy rebounds right there. But the matchup is great, is basically what I'm calling out. What I actually ended up running with was a double-double for Chet Holmgren. I did this on Bet365. I took him for 10 points and 10 rebounds. Got some pretty good odds for that. Almost plus money. I think it was minus 105. And those odds worked out better than taking his points plus rebounds. So Chet Holmgren, that'll be my third play that I want to share with you guys. Obviously, there were more players, got them out to my VIP members, got some risky stuff happening. It's a 12-game slate. It's going to get crazy. Now I need you to do me a favor. Please ensure that you've liked the video, because I'm sure you like the picks that I've given out. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, because I drop heat like this every single day. I'm not like everybody else who shares a couple of picks and says, I hope they hit. Nah. We're sharing some picks, but I'm going to give you extra value. We're going to do Daft's deep dive. We're going to go through a lot of players, talk about my thoughts, my opinions, because value is what's going to separate me from everybody else. So if you do appreciate all the extra stuff that I do for you guys, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking to get to 12,000 subscribers very soon, and I need your help to do that. And if you also want to support me, check out a lot of my partners right up here. These guys will pay me a little bit of dosh if you happen to sign up. Use the code DAFT, deposit $10, and then your boy gets paid. But appreciate you guys who made it this far. Let's get into Daft's deep dive. All right, we got the Detroit Pistons versus the Charlotte Hornets in this game. Quick look at the lineups. No major changes to the ins and outs for Charlotte. I think the biggest call out, Nick Richards. He's still out, so they don't have any true bigs. The old man Taj Gibson gets to start at center after 2 failed experiments with Grant Williams. So Looking at this, we've got Charlotte as 2-point favorites. Total points are at 222.5. So that's a real interesting one. Let's hit on some key players and talk about what we think they can do here. First one's LaMelo Ball. His point sign's at 25.5. He's averaging 28.6 points per game. He just went under against Minnesota. And when I previewed that game, I told you it was a risk because of how difficult the matchup is. But now he's up against the Detroit Pistons. The matchup's not difficult, but it's not easy. LaMelo scoring a lot of points in the pick and roll. Detroit, they're probably 10th in the league in defending pick and rolls. So you could say it is on the easier side when it comes to matchups, but he does score a lot of his points above the break. And the Detroit Pistons, they're in the top 12 in terms of how they defend it. So they're not too bad, to be honest. So this matchup, not an easy one for LaMelo. Defensive rating for the Pistons, middle, ranking 14th, middle of the pack. So again, they're not doing too bad on the defensive end of the floor. And at 25.5, honestly, the line feels just about right. I don't have a real lean on that. If you look at his assist prop, though, 6.5 is his line, which seems ridiculously low for someone like LaMelo Ball. But he's only averaging 5.7 assists per game this season. He's gone under it in 4 straight games. The potential assist numbers haven't been as high since the season started. Last 4 games, they've been very low. And I think they stay low until they get more threats down low. LaMelo throws a whole lot of lobs. They like to play in transition, and it just hasn't been clicking for the Charlotte Hornets at the moment. So not brave enough to take the under in assists, although that is the way that I'd be leaning. Let's talk about Cade Cunningham for a moment. Now, Cade, his point line's at 23.5. He's averaging 23.3 on the season, under this line in 4 consecutive games. Matchup against the Charlotte Hornets, one of the worst defensive ratings in the season. Bottom 3 in terms of how they defend the above the break. They're bottom 5. How they defend the pick and roll, they're pretty much mid-tier. So you might find a lot of shooters in this game are probably going to have some success here against the Charlotte Hornets. They do allow a lot of three-pointers. They do foul a lot as well. Defensively, just not great at all. Now, if a lot of people have great matchups, Cade Cunningham's probably not the right guy. In difficult matchups, I would say Cade Cunningham, probably the guy to score some points. Up against Charlotte here, I think the assist might be a good pivot. 7.5. He's averaging 7.4 this season. I just don't see any crazy value here. His potential assist numbers, not very high. Jaden Ivey, he's taken a leap this year. Tobias Harris, solid role player, doing what he normally does. Fuck all, but he does manage to take some possessions. So Cade Cunningham, nothing I'd want to bet on. An interesting one could be Jaden Ivey, who's taken a leap this year. 19.6 as an average, scored 26 against the Lakers. I did tell you guys I liked his over. He killed it there. But let's talk about his matchup in this game. So Jaden Ivey does score a lot of points in transition. And he also scores as a spot-up shooter and in the pick and roll. His matchup is not necessarily ideal here against the Charlotte Hornets, but keeping that in mind, the Charlotte Hornets are not very good at defense anyway. He scores a lot of his points around the rim. The Charlotte Hornets, one of the worst teams at defending under the basket. So Jaden Ivey, with his aggressiveness, probably could get there. But I think the value here, it would be someone like a Tim Hardaway or maybe a Tobias Harris, just some guy that nobody's thinking about. So Tim Hardaway, obviously shooting a lot of above the break threes. And as we can see here, great matchup for him here against Charlotte. And if we look at how teams defend above the break, you look at this blue line, and these are all the teams that Tim Hardaway's played this season. He had an easy matchup against the Pacers, scored 14. Had a stretch of more difficult matchups, still played well against Miami and Philadelphia. Had an easier matchup here against New York, but didn't shoot very well from the field. And then tough matchup against Brooklyn, scored 14. Easy matchup against the Lakers, scoring 19 points, taking 12 shots. And up against the Charlotte Hornets here, he's about to have the easiest matchup he's had all season. So Tim Hardaway to score some points, I think that could be a good look. If you're just looking at matchups and stuff like that, I wouldn't be surprised to see him eat. But let's have a quick look at Jalen Duren, double-double. That could be an opportunity here. But his points, somewhat inconsistent. His rebound numbers, it all comes down to foul trouble. This Charlotte Hornets team, 7th fewest rebounds allowed, though. So something interesting about that. And part of it could be because they're just giving up points, right? No need to get offensive rebounds when they're letting you score all the time. So Jalen Duren, not necessarily exciting me in this game. But let's jump into the Orlando Magic versus the Indiana Pacers. And I do have a couple interesting leans. Let's talk about Tyrese Halliburton. Now, one thing I'm interested to know is this assist prop at 9.5 because the man's been on fire. I would definitely take Tyrese Halliburton for a double-double, meaning over his assist prop. You'll get that for plus money. The only question mark on it is Andrew Nembhard, who's a game-time decision in this game. So Nembhard has been in and out of the lineup for the last couple of games. and I thought he was out of the lineup, and then Tyrese Halliburton killed it with assists. Then he came back, and Tyrese Halliburton still killed it with assists. So is this the Tyrese Halliburton that we've all known to grow and love? So it could be there. Now he's up against the Orlando Magic. On the season, a very good defensive team, but with no Banchero, their offense really sucks, and they're starting to get torn apart on the transition game. So Tyrese Halliburton can definitely get it done on the assist side, and even if you look at his previous matchups against them, had a 15 assist game against them last season on 22 potentials, had an 8 assist game as well, and in this particular game, the Indiana Pacers 6.5 point favorites in this one. So if the Pacers are expected to pump, Tyrese Halliburton might have a hand in that. So I did consider his double-double, meaning an over plus his assists. I did consider it, and I didn't ultimately take it because the blowout does scare me a little bit. This Orlando Magic team, quite difficult to bet on right now. But let's take a look at Franz. Franz Wagner, his point line's at 23.5. He's under in 7 out of 8 games this season. He's only averaging 17 points per game, but 23.5 up against the Indiana Pacers. Now, the Pacers still bottom 3 in defensive rating. The matchup's not a bad one here for Franz, so his usage rate's going to be high. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. He scores in the paint. Pacers not good at defending the paint anyway. They play with a lot of pace, so that means it's going to open a lot of things up. Now, Franz is playing more on the ball as a pick and roll ball handler, especially since Banchero has been out. He's not so much a spot up shooter right now. And the Indiana Pacers are absolutely terrible at defending that play type. They foul a lot. They give up some free throws. So an aggressive Franz, I could honestly see him going over in this one. And if I think about this game here against OKC, his last game where he played 34 minutes in a blowout loss, he was still aggressive, still took 17 shots, still scored 22 points on one of the best defenses in the league. Now he's up against one of the worst defenses, and he's still going to have a really high usage rate. I think an over for Franz could be a good look, but I'll leave it up to you whether you want to take that bet or not. But I don't mind the points prop there for Franz Wagner. Someone I could probably lean to the over is Jalen Suggs. His usage rate is going to be very high. Not as effective as a pick and roll ball handler, although he's going to see an uplift in those. And this matchup is great too. So Suggs, Franz, maybe a Franz for 20, Suggs for 15 in a parlay. You could take that as well. But I don't know. There's a whole lot of games, and I didn't want to put too many bets down. But let's talk about the next one. So Knicks versus the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young, DeAndre Hunter, game time decisions for Atlanta. And for New York, Cam Payne's a game time decision. Now, let's talk about Trae Young for a second. He just shaved his head. He's got the Duff previews hairstyle, and I think it's going to bring him a lot of luck here, Trae Young. But let's talk about it. His points props at 24.5. He scored 2 points against the Boston Celtics in his last game, up against the Knicks, who are bottom 10 in defensive rating. The matchup's a nice one here. So Trae Young, as a pick and roll ball handler, the Knicks bottom 8 in defending that. He scores a lot of his points up off the break. The Knicks bottom 10 defending that. So the matchup here for Trae Young to score some points is not a bad one at all. So I can definitely see a great bounce back here from Trae Young. The other look here is around his assists. 10.5 is the line. He's averaging 11 this season, despite only getting 6 against Boston. Up against the New York Knicks, ranking 15th in the league for assists allowed. And they do give up a whole lot of shots, right? So defensively, the Knicks aren't great. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Trae Young racking up some assists. If you wanted to look at assists allowed and how some teams he's faced, you can see when he was killing the assists, a lot of these teams actually give up a lot of them, whereas the Knicks probably don't give as much as a lot of the other teams. So that might be a reason for you not to take it. But if you want to look at defensive rating, the Knicks, obviously not a great team when it comes to defensive rating. And whenever Trae Young's had a soft matchup when it comes to defensive rating, outside of the Hornets here, Trae Young's gone over. But I think I do like his points prop a little bit more, if I must be honest with you guys. Not ultimately taking it because I like the Clint Capella under more than anything. But let's talk about Jalen Johnson, who's been an absolute beast as of late. His point line's at 19.5. Value if you started betting on him early in the season, but this is the Jalen Johnson a lot of people predicted. He's hit this in 4 out of 8 games. He's averaging 18 points per game. Now, his play style, scores as a spot-up shooter, and he gets out in transition. This matchup, not as great for him compared to Trae Young, because the Knicks, top 13 in allowing spot-up shooting and top 7 in limiting the transition. And they also don't foul much and give him too many free throws. He does score a lot of his points right into the basket, and the Knicks probably above average in defending that area of the floor. So the matchup's not great for him, but if we did have to look at his previous matchups, he's had difficult matchups and still scored. This Boston Celtics game, that was a terrible matchup for him, and he still made it happen. 20 points. I only shot 35% from the field, but took 20 shots. So a very aggressive game for Jalen Johnson. And until they get back to full strength, I think he remains that way, to be honest. No Bogdanovic is about 10 to 15 shots that could be going somewhere else. And Hunter as well, depending on his back, that could limit Jalen Johnson as well. The one play from Jalen Johnson, which is an interesting one, is the assist, because he does have a lot of potential here as a secondary playmaker. Even though Dyson Daniels is playing the guard, Jalen Johnson does a lot more of the playmaking on the offensive side outside of Trae Young. The matchup against the Knicks is not necessarily a bad one. So that's an interesting one. But with so many games on, why do you have to look so hard to make a bet, right? So let's take a look at Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson has been difficult as hell to bet on this season because Tibbs not playing him 1,000 minutes a game. He's over this line in his last 2, but prior to that, he was under this line in 4 straight. He's averaging 26 points per game. His line's at 28.5. Now, he is up against the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, one of the worst defensive ratings in the team. They are the worst team in the league at defending the pick and roll right now. And if you think about how they defend on the rim, they're not great there. They're not great above the break. So just defensively for the Hawks, not very good at all. The risk in this play, if you're betting Jalen Brunson, is a blowout. The Knicks 7.5-point favorites in this game. So at 28.5, even though he's got a great matchup and he can probably tear them apart, if there's a blowout, which there very well could be, I don't want to be betting on Jalen Brunson because we've seen in previous games this season in blowouts, he's seen limited minutes, right? And I don't want to be caught on that side of a blowout again. So Jalen Brunson, I'd pass on that. But one play that could interest you is this. Now, this was a really popular play when they versed the Houston Rockets. It was Jalen Brunson under 7.5 assists. He played 42 minutes in that game, and he finished with 8 assists, breaking the hearts of the whole gambling community. But Jalen Brunson is up against the Hawks, and they don't allow that many assists. They're 11th fewest assists in the league, believe it or not, because whoever gets the ball can pretty much score whenever they like. Their on-ball defense is what's poor. And Jalen Brunson, if there's a blowout, he's not going to get these assist numbers, right? He's averaging 6 assists this season. So I think Jalen Brunson unders in assists could be a really good look in this game. The odds for it aren't terrific, so you might want to mix it with something. But I do like the under there for Jalen Brunson and his assist line. Lastly, I think there's Karl-Anthony Towns. His points prop doesn't interest me at all. He hasn't been performing very well this season when it comes to his points prop. But if I was ever going to bet on Karl-Anthony Towns, it would be around his rebounds. He had 19 boards against the Rockets. I had that as a lean, and for some reason I didn't take it. 19 boards, though. Crazy. Now he's up against the Atlanta Hawks in the bottom half of the league in terms of rebounds allowed. But again, the blowout is another risk. So I think it's a good look. I think he has a strong rebounding game, but does he get the minutes to get all these rebounds? That is the question. All right, jumping into the next one. It's the Golden State Warriors versus Boston Celtics. No major changes to the lineups. Jaylen Brown, Porzingis still out for Boston. Let's take a look at it. We've got Jason Tatum. Points lines at 30.5 here against Golden State. In terms of matchup, somewhat difficult. He scores a lot of his points above the break. We know the Warriors are great at defending that. They've got the second best defensive rating this season. And looking at how Jason Tatum likes to play in isolation, the Warriors ain't too bad at defending that as well. So 30.5 seems like a high line. The spread in this game is 7 points. So I think in order for Jason Tatum to cover this line, he's got to play a ton of minutes. Now, Jason Tatum, bit of a flat track bully. And what I mean by that is he destroys the teams where he has great matchups. The Knicks, not a great defense this year. The Pistons, they're ass. The Pacers are ass. The Hornets are ass as well. In 2 games against the Hornets and the Hawks, he still managed to go under this line. And yeah, 30.5, it seems like a bit of a risk to me. Not to say that he's going to blow the Warriors out, but he's obviously going to get the usage rate, but it's a pretty difficult matchup for Jason Tatum. Probably one of the tougher tests that he's had all season. The toughest game he has played so far would be against the Bucks. He only scored 15 points in that game. So Up against the Warriors, it'll be interesting. I lean to the under, but that's because I'm a Jason Tatum hater. Shout out to all the Jason Tatum haters out there. Let me know in the comment section. But someone I think can go off in this game is Steph Curry. There's been no noise. No one's talking about Steph Curry this season. Even when the Warriors are playing well, it had nothing to do with Steph Curry. Now, Steph played 4 games this season. He's gone under in every single game, under 24.5. He's averaging 19.8 points per game. His minutes haven't been very high. Hasn't played more than 30 minutes in any game whatsoever. There could be a minutes restriction there. But up against the Boston Celtics, who are not great at defending guards whatsoever, they are terrible. No, I'll take that back. They're not terrible, but they prefer point guards to score on them outside of creating for others. So Steph Curry could have a good game here, waiting for a breakout. And there's rumors that that minutes restriction could be lifted for him. So if you're just looking at his numbers, it's not great. If you look at his matchup, it's not the best either, but it's definitely not a difficult matchup for Steph Curry. So he could definitely have a game. Your Buddy Hields, your Andrew Wiggins, probably not going to have a good game. The Boston Celtics do very well to limit shots in the corner and spot up shooting. So I don't necessarily love those, but Steph Curry could definitely have a big game. What's interesting is probably his rebounds and assists. So if you check this out, he hasn't been shooting the lights out this season, but he is averaging 11.3 rebounds and assists in limited minutes, right? His line in this game is 8.5 for Steph Curry. Now, the Boston Celtics overall don't allow too many assists, don't allow too many rebounds. But if you dive a little bit deeper, they do allow assists and they do allow some rebounds to some guards. They do shoot a lot of 3-pointers, which means there's a lot of long rebounds to go. And Steph Curry could definitely take advantage of that. His rebound prop's at 3.5. I honestly don't hate that. His assist prop is at 5.5. I don't love that as much, but if you combine them both together, I don't think it's such a bad play for Steph Curry. I think he can fill up the box score, and we'll see. I think that'll be a great game. Let's look at the next one. It's the Lakers versus the Grizzlies. For the Lakers, D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, Anthony Glass, and Davis, all game time decisions. And for Memphis, they've got a ton of outs and a ton of game time decisions. Concha, unlikely to play. Luke Kennard, unlikely to play as well. So we might see a whole lot of Ja Morant out here. And I think he could be due for a big game because this Lakers team, their defense sucks. Let's talk about Ja Morant. His points line is 23.5. He's hit this in 3 out of 7 games this season, averaging 20 points per game. The matchup with the Lakers is a great one for Ja Morant to go off. He likes to score in transition, and he likes to get points in the restricted area. This Lakers team, bottom 2 in defending the transition because they're fat, lazy, and old, and they're bottom 3 in defending the restricted area. Their defensive rating, bottom 6 in the league, and they're bottom 3 in terms of points in the paint, and Ja Morant lives in there. So Ja Morant could really have a big game here. The Lakers also give up a ton of assists. So the way I'm thinking about this already, do we just take Ja Morant over his points and assist line of 33.5? Now, he's only hit that in 2 games this season, but keeping in mind, since he saw an uplift in his minutes, been part of a few blowouts here. So I don't mind it. Points plus assists for Ja Morant. The matchup is great. His assist line is at 8.5 again. The odds for this aren't great. If you guys watched my last video, I loved his over 8.5. Being greedy, I took him at 9.5 to get plus money. And look what he did against Brooklyn. He finished on 9, still had 17 potential assists. The Memphis Grizzlies just did not shoot well in that game. So I think to play it safe, points plus assists here for Ja Morant has my attention. That could make the list here because this Lakers team sucks on the defensive side. And if Anthony Davis is not going to play this game, it just weakens them even more. So I haven't bet this yet, but now I'm strongly considering it. Ja Morant, I do like the matchup, and I like the play here. Zach Edey could be an interesting one. He had a massive game, 25 points against Brooklyn. He scores all of his points in the paint. The Lakers, dog shit at defending in the paint, as you know. Similar types of players have had some success. Rudy Gobert scored on them, Jared Allen, Jakob Poeltl, Jalen Duren. They all had a little bit of success there. So Zach Edey, can he go back-to-back big games? I'm not too sure, but I don't mind the look here. If you look at his rebounds, though, 3 very strong rebounding games, and that's where he's starting to see some minutes. So if he gets the minutes, he is definitely going to be – he's going to have the opportunity. But if you think about it, if Anthony Davis does play, does Zach Edey have any chance defending Anthony Davis? Probably not, and that's going to impact his minutes there. So, yeah, I don't necessarily love Zach Edey, but if he kills the Lakers, I'll be spewing about it. But let's talk about Anthony Davis. His line's at 29.5. We took his over in that last game against Detroit. That was pretty sweat-free. I said Detroit will hang with the Lakers. They did better than that. They beat the Lakers, but Anthony Davis forced to play a lot of minutes, 39 minutes in that loss. In this game against Memphis, it's a 1-point spread. Lakers are the favorites in this game. That means if Anthony Davis is good to go, he probably plays a lot of minutes. And if he plays a lot of minutes, he's going to get a lot of opportunities to score. Lines up to 29.5, though, which is quite high. He is averaging 32.6 per game. I think he's leading the league in scoring. Now, Anthony Davis scoring a lot of points in the paint. This Memphis Grizzlies team, above average defending in the paint. Their weak spot is above the break, and Anthony Davis ain't scoring from there. So his matchup in here, somewhat difficult. The Grizzlies, top 8 in points allowed in the paint. They do play with a lot of pace, and if the Lakers play really fast, Anthony Davis doesn't get many touches. Plays a lot better in a slower game, so they can get him the ball in the half court. So Anthony Davis, his points I don't necessarily love. His rebounds are at 12.5, and that feels ridiculously high as well. So Anthony Davis, I'm not feeling him in this one. But what about the king, LeBron James, 25.5? Now, LeBron loves to score in transition. The Grizzlies, not that great at defending that. He has a pretty good matchup if he's going to try to score the ball today. So I do like that. But yeah, can you trust LeBron? I don't think so. Oh, I can't because I'm a hater. Shout out to all the haters for LeBron James as well. I think someone who's going to probably have a good game here, someone like an Austin Reeves, a D'Angelo Russell, and a Rui Hachimura. So this Memphis team, they dig in on all the drives. If LeBron drives, they're going to double team him. And he's going to find some open shooters here. So pivot here, if you like LeBron, you might want to look at his assist prop. That's at 8.5. He's had 10 plus assists in his last 2 games. So the assist prop could be a good look here. Or you could look at the shooters like your Austin Reeves, who scores a lot of points from above the break. You can see it here. Grizzlies, not great at the pick and roll defense, and they're terrible at defending spot-up shooters. So your Austin Reeves could have a good game. Your D'Los could have a good game. Your Rui Hachimuras could have a good game scoring the ball. I can't tell you which one it's going to be. I can let you know who's got the good matchup here. But in this game, I think Ja Morant's my guy. I'm really liking him. So let's talk about the next one. It's the Spurs versus the Houston Rockets. Now, we've got Dylan Brooks is a game-time decision for Houston. Tari Easton's a game-time decision as well. And for the Spurs, Jeremy Sohan, he's out for this game. So he's been someone everyone's liked to bet on. Keldon Johnson probably sees more opportunities in this one. This is the 3rd time these guys have played each other, so it's going to be interesting to see what changes that they make. But let's talk about Jalen Green for a second. 2 games against the Spurs, scored 29 and 36 points. Absolutely killed them. He's been quiet ever since, going under in 3 straight games. Now, if we talk about his matchup, this matchup against the Spurs, difficult on paper. Pick and roll ball handler, they limit them very well. They don't foul too much. But if we look at the shot zones, it's a great matchup for Jalen Green. He scores 54% of his points above the break, and the Spurs, one of the worst teams at defending that. And if we look at the matchups here, and you can see it in this blue graph, this is all where teams allow points to come from. These first sets of games, all of these teams are bad at defending above the break. The Hornets, the Grizzlies, the Spurs. And he went over in 3 out of the 4. Then came up against Dallas, who are good at defending above the break. Came up against the Warriors, who are one of the best at defending above the break. Then the Knicks, who are probably average at defending above the break. But now he's up against the Spurs, who are trash, right? So a good bounce back game for Jalen Green. That could definitely happen. But if you're someone who loves recent form, you're not betting on Jalen Green today. But I'm telling you, the matchup ain't too bad. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him bounce back. We got Alperen Sengun. His point sign's at 18.5. He finally made some shots against the Knicks after getting benched in that Warriors game. Now he's up against the Spurs again, who he struggled against. 6 points and 12 points in the 2 games this season. Short of pretty poor percentage. Now, we know the Spurs are not good at defending above the break, but they're good defending the paint. Alperen Sengun scores a lot of his points down there. So he's got a tough matchup when it comes to scoring the ball. He's not scoring a Wemby on the block. So I don't know why this line's moved up to 18.5. I'm not too sure. He's had a big game against Wemby before, but not this season. So Sengun, I'm probably a little bit hesitant to bet on that. And if we look at the San Antonio Spurs, let's take a look at Wemby. He's had a great game against the Rockets and a bad game against the Rockets. Wemby's in love with the three-pointer at the moment. But his matchup to score some points, it's not a bad one here against Houston. But you're 7-4, 7-5, resorting to a whole lot of three-pointers. Yeah, I ain't about that. I don't necessarily like that. But here's somebody who's been playing out of their mind. CP3, his point line's at 11.5. He has covered that in 5 straight games. Absolutely killing it. And in those 5 games, he's averaging 15.6 points per game. So loving what I'm seeing from Chris Paul here. Against the Rockets, he had one game with 3 points. He had one game with 16. Now, up against the Rockets again, we know that Chris Paul scores from the perimeter. The Rockets pretty good at defending above the break, to be honest. But if you're betting on Chris Paul, you're probably looking at the assists. His line's at 8.5. He's averaging 8.9 assists this season. He's had one game with 9 assists. That's where he scored fuck all points. Then the following game against them, he had 3 assists, 13 potential assists though, but he ended up scoring a lot in that game. So Chris Paul, pretty difficult because he's not going to do both. He's not going to give you a lot of points and a lot of assists too often, although he has been doing it as of late. So your points plus assists might be the play here. 20.5 is the line. He's covered this in 4 consecutive games. But I don't love it that much. I do lean to the over for Chris Paul, but this particular game, third time they're playing each other in a matter of weeks, I ain't into that. Let's jump into the next one. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers versus New Orleans Pelicans. Let's talk about it. Firstly, let's have a look at Zion. Is Zion going to play is the question. We don't know. Zion's a game-time decision. So is Jordan Hawkins. And the Pels still have a whole lot of outs. For Cleveland, Karis LeVert, Tyson, game-time decisions in this one. So for the New Orleans Pelicans, I wouldn't bet on any of their players given the game-time decision status. But surprisingly, you can still get Brandon Ingram lines at the moment. 23.5. I love the over if Zion is out, if Hawkins is out, but we don't know. So for Brandon Ingram, his matchup here against Cleveland is somewhat difficult. If he's working that pick and roll, he's got a tough matchup for him. He does have a score from the mid-range, which not a lot of players do. And this Cleveland team, that is their weak spot in their defense, is that mid-range jump shot. And Brandon Ingram, not afraid to take those. But until Zion and Hawkins and their status is clear, I would stay away from betting on any of these players. For Cleveland, we got Donovan Mitchell. His points line, 25.5. That's the same points line he had against the Milwaukee Bucks. But his matchup here against the Pels, they're 7.5-point favorites, keeping that in mind. It's not too bad. In pick and roll, they're not great, but they're not bad. And above the break, the New Orleans Pelicans, somewhat decent defending above the break, but they don't have Herb Jones in this one. So Donovan Mitchell probably has a pretty easy matchup in terms of who's defending him. Where the Pelicans are pretty soft is points in the paint. So they're going to get destroyed down low. That's because they don't have any true bigs. They're pretty thin down there. They allow a whole lot of assists. So Donovan Mitchell, to cover his assist prop, I think that could be a good look here. There could be some easy lobs down low. But someone I think that's going to be a popular bet here would be Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley scores a lot of his points in the paint. He also runs in transition, and the Pelicans pretty bad at defending that. They're one of the worst teams in the league at giving up the corner threes and points at the rim. And Evan Mobley loves to get those points at the rim. So he's averaging 17 points per game this season. His line's at 15.5. He's got a pretty great matchup. How do you not take it? So Evan Mobley is probably going to be a popular pick on the day, and I can definitely see why. Let's look at the Chicago Bulls versus the Dallas Mavericks. And I think there should be a lot of points in this game. Dallas getting a little bit soft defensively over the last couple of games, but for the most part, they've improved from last season. But the Bulls have Josh Giddey, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, all game time decisions in this game. So that's not promising. Lonzo Ball's already out. Whereas for Dallas, it's Derek Lively. He's a game time decision. So Dallas pretty strong in this game. The spread is 10.5 to the Mavs. Now, even though Luka might have a great matchup, even though Kyrie might have a great matchup, the blowout does concern me. But someone who can get it done and who doesn't have to wait till the last quarter is probably someone like Luka. But if you're betting on someone like Kyrie, who probably does his best work in the fourth, if Dallas are dominating, Kyrie probably not going to see much time. But let's talk about Luka for a second. His line's at 31.5 against the Chicago Bulls. He's got a great matchup. He scores a lot in the pick and roll. The Bulls bottom 5 in defending that. He scores a lot above the break. The Bulls are average at defending above the break. The Bulls, though, allow the most points in the paint, and we know Luka can get in there as well. And another great thing about this game is that the Bulls play with the fastest pace in the league. With a lot of pace, there's a lot of opportunity. And although Luka doesn't play fast, it does open things up for him. So Luka could definitely fill up the stat sheet in this particular game. The spread of 10.5 does worry me because the Bulls, they do allow a lot of assists and a lot of rebounds, and that's because of the pace. So a Luka triple-double, I wouldn't be upset by that. If you look at his assists, though, he's only had 10-plus assists in one game, and that was his last game against Indiana. If you look at his rebounds, he's had 2 games where he's had 10-plus rebounds. His line's always about 8.5 for his rebounds and assists these days. So an over in his rebounds plus assists could be a look, even though he's only hit that once this season. I think the pace of this game is going to be crazy. Now, if we just look at opponent pace, we can see he's had 3 games where the game was pretty fast paced in terms of the matchup. One against Utah, he had 9 rebounds, 8 assists in that game, just falling under this line. And he had one against Indiana, where they played a really fast pace. He had 7 rebounds, but 15 assists. And now he's got the Chicago Bulls, which is the fastest pace in the league. Chances are he's going to get a ton of opportunities here. But yeah, Luka, even though I'm supporting Dallas, I don't think I can get with it. Kyrie, very similar matchup to Luka, is a great one. Transition points, pick and roll ball handler. He's got a great matchup to score some points. But Kyrie sometimes waits for a difficult matchup to turn it on, and it probably wouldn't be a difficult matchup here against the Chicago Bulls. As much as I love the bloke, I don't know if I could bet he's over. Klay Thompson could be a popular play today because Klay Thompson scores a lot of points when the matchup is easy. I'll just put it that way. If you look at how teams defend above the break 3-pointers, which is where Klay Thompson lives, we can see here, when this blue line goes up, his points go up. First 3 games of the season, great matchup, cleared this line. Last game against Indiana, his points line, he did cover. I think it was 15.5. He finished on 16. Now his line is at 16.5, and it's against the Chicago Bulls. So the matchup's not ideal, but it is still one of the easier ones he's had this season. I'm not overly interested in betting on Klay Thompson today. And then if you look at the Chicago Bulls, I think the only player that's really worth betting on here is Nikola Vucevic. And look at this PRA. I had to call this one out. If you look at the over 32.5 PRA for Nikola Vucevic, it's 100% hit rate. He's averaging 36.3 PRA this season. Now, Zach LaVine's not good to go. Vucevic usage rate goes up, right? But then the chances of a blowout probably increase as well. So do with that as you wish. But I think Nikola Vucevic, he's been playing great all season. He's covered this in 1 game against Dallas last year, I believe. Let me double check that. Yep. And that was a close game where he got 36 minutes. The other game we had 21 PRA, 35-point loss. So it was a blowout, didn't get the minutes. So basically, if you think the Bulls can keep it close with Dallas today, Luke is going to have a big game, and Nikola Vucevic is going to have a big game. That's pretty much the way that I see it. If you think it's going to be a blowout, I still wouldn't take an under given the pace of the game. I'd probably just avoid betting it whatsoever. But if you think the Bulls can keep it close, I think those two are really great bets. Next, we've got the Miami Heat versus the Phoenix Suns. Bradley Beal's a game time decision, but he's likely to play. And for the Heat, Jaquez and Kevin Love, they're out for this game. Now, both of these games, both of these teams, Miami and Phoenix, they're both teams I don't bet on. The problem here is they're pretty, I wouldn't say they're stacked, but they're deep, meaning a lot of different players can give you production. So it's hard to really predict who's going to go off. I said it in the last video, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, they take turns being good at basketball. That last game against the 76ers, Kevin Durant said, it's my turn to be good at basketball. So he went over, Booker went under. The 2 games prior, Kevin Durant sucked ass, but Devin Booker was like, hold my beer, and he went off. So up against Miami, which one of them is going to do it? I do not know. I can't tell you. Looking at the matchups, Devin Booker, his matchup is probably average. If we look at Kevin Durant, his matchup in this game is average to difficult. So neither of them have ideal matchups here. So not overly keen to bet on either of those against Miami. Miami also play pretty slow, so it's hard to rack up the stats against them. But if we look at Miami, again, similar problem. You've got Tyler Hero, who can produce on any given night. You've got Jimmy Butler, who picks and chooses when he applies himself. You've got Bam Adebayo, who's recently just started to get more involved on the offensive end. And then there's Terry Rozier as well, who can get hot. Now, if we look at Phoenix, if you just wanted to target the best matchups, we know that the Phoenix Suns not good in the pick and roll as a defense. So Tyler Hero could have a good matchup here. They're not good above the break. So I'd say Tyler Hero probably has the best offensive matchup in this game. Bam Adebayo, he's got a tough matchup to score some points, but that doesn't mean you should bet their overs. I'm just saying the matchup is good there. So if Tyler Hero's got a good matchup and he's performing well, that could open up his assists as well. It's not just his points you need to worry about. But yeah, I'm not taking any bets on this game. I don't like either teams. Next up, we've got Nikola Jokic and his Nuggets versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. So we did talk about a bit about Nikola Jokic, how I'd probably lean to his under because his PRA is so high. His points line's at 28.5, his assist line's at 9.5, and his rebound line is at 12.5. That shit is just insane. but he is definitely good enough to do it. We spoke about Nikola Jokic and Chet Holmgren before. Let's talk about some interesting ones. We've got Russell Westbrook. Now, Mr. Rocks and Diamonds himself, he's had 2 games of 20-plus points. Every other game, he hasn't gone close to it. Jamal Murray is out, though. So if Jamal Murray's out, we're going to see a lot more Westbrook action. But Aaron Gordon is also out. So there's big problems here. So maybe the under for Jokic's PRA really comes into play. But also, it means he's probably going to do more Nikola Jokic. Russell Westbrook, tough to bet on, but his line's at 14.5. It's always been around there since he hit the starting lineup, and he's given you a bit of both. He scored 5 points in 31 minutes against Utah. He was terrible. And then against the Raptors, he made a 3-pointer. Then he missed his next 4 shots, but he made his free throws, scored a ton of points there. And he's not afraid to shoot the ball. He'll keep shooting it. And with one less mouth to feed, Russell Westbrook could get busy in this. If we look at his assist prop, it's at 7.5, which seems crazy high. Up against OKC, who don't give up many assists, who are very good defensively, with a potential blowout here. How do you not take the under here for Russell Westbrook and his assists? If we look at his rebounds line, it's at 5.5. He has covered this in 2 games already. And he had 5 rebounds in 21 minutes against OKC. He's probably going to play 30 to 35. So Westbrook, I'd probably say fade the points. I don't see him scoring many points in this game. He loves to score around the rim. And with Chet Holmgren down there, it might be a little bit difficult for him. So Westbrook under in his points, probably the player that I like the most if I was going to bet on him. A popular play every single game this guy plays is Christian Braun because he just seems to over-deliver. His point sign's at 13.5 now. Scores in transition and as a spot-up shooter. They're probably the only things that the OKC aren't the best at defending. So his matchup is nice, but the blowout is obviously another risk. His rebounds line's at 4.5. He had 7 rebounds last time against OKC, but only 9 rebound chances. In other games with 9 rebound chances, he's probably getting 3 to 4 boards. So that's probably an outlier. Could have been lucky. But if you were someone who bet on Christian Braun's points plus rebounds in this game, wouldn't hate you for it. It's at 17.5. He's averaging almost 20 points and rebounds. He had 20 points and rebounds against OKC last time in 29 minutes. And in that game, they lost by 15. So he could have gotten more minutes, but it was a blowout. And chances are we get the same outcome here. So Christian Braun over his points and rebounds, it's a really interesting look. I wouldn't hate you for betting on it. Now we've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams. Now, SGA is only averaging 25 points per game this season. His matchup is somewhat difficult. Denver, good at defending the pick and roll. And SGA did score 28 points against them last time in that game. 24 shots, very aggressive. He hasn't really taken that many shots as of late. But Jalen Williams has started to emerge. So Jalen Williams' point signs at 20.5. Likes to score in the paint. You can just see it on this graph here, though. Denver Nuggets, terrible at defending in the paint. Jalen Williams is a 3-level scorer. It really comes down to, does he try to score in the paint? That's my only concern. I think Chet's probably got the best matchup here. So, but yeah, not loving much. We got Michael Porter Jr., though. His point sign's at 18.5. I can't help but think to go to the under. 17 shots against OKC in the opening game. He only made 5 of them. And that's because OKC, they do give up some corner threes. MPJ loves shooting from above the break, though. And Oklahoma City Thunder, best team in the league at limiting points above the break. And if Westbrook drives, they're probably not going to collapse either. So they might stay home to shooters. But Michael Porter Jr. has been playing a little bit better as of late. But yeah, this matchup is tough as hell. I don't know if anyone takes that bet. We've got 2 more games. We've got the Toronto Raptors versus the Sacramento Kings. And in this one, Kevin Huerter is a game-time decision. And I did speak about Emmanuel Quickley being a game-time decision as well. I don't find myself betting on many Sacramento games ever since DeMar DeRozan got there, because not only is it De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Keegan Murray, DeMar DeRozan, there's a whole lot of guys who can score points here. And they probably have a good matchup. So I can tell you who's got the best matchup. Does that mean they go over? That I do not know. But let's talk about De'Aaron Fox. His point signs at 25.5, 3 out of 7 on the year, 24 points per game, 3-level scorer, loves to score in the pick and roll and in transition. And his matchup is not too bad at all. If we look at the opponent's defense, they're pretty good at defending above the break threes. De'Aaron Fox does shoot from there, but he's more than happy to drive, get to the rim as well. If we look at DeMar DeRozan, hitting this line of 24.5 in 4 out of 7 games, 25 points per game. DeMar DeRozan scores a lot of points in that mid-range. You don't need this graph to know that. That's just what he does. And this Raptors team, bottom half of the league in defending the mid-range. They're really good at just limiting shooters from above the break. Now, Domantas Sabonis, he scores a lot of his points down low around the rim. He's got a pretty easy matchup as well against Toronto. He only scored 17 points against them last time, though. So that's what I'd be a little bit worried about. But he's got a great matchup too. Figure that. Keegan Murray scores in transition, spot-up shooter. His matchup is not excellent, but in terms of shot zones, his matchup ain't too bad. Now, he scored 16 points last time against them. His line's at 14.5. I'm not betting on any of these guys because I couldn't tell you who's going to score the points. They all have a pretty decent matchup. This Raptors team, though, who's going to score points for them? It's pretty predictable. It's RJ Barrett, it's Grady Dick, and Jakob Poeltl. Like, these three guys have been animals. If you look at Grady Dick, his point line's at 20.5. That's a pretty high line for somebody that nobody knew about before this season started. And he's covered this line in 4 consecutive games. He's been an absolute beast, averaging 21 points per game this season. He scored 22 points the last time he played Sacramento, 38 minutes, 6 for 17. So didn't shoot very well, but still got the buckets. Now, Grady Dick is a spot-up shooter. That's where he scores a lot of his points. And the Sacramento Kings, the worst team in the league at defending spot-up shooters. They're terrible at defending the corners. They give those up at a pretty high rate. Grady Dick is shooting a lot of his stuff from above the break, though. And the Kings ain't too bad at that. So Grady Dick, interesting look. You might want to look at his three-pointers because he's been throwing them up. He did cover his three-point line last time against them. He'll probably take 8 to 10 three-pointers in this game. I don't love it because it's a volume play, and anything can happen when it comes to volume plays. But if we look at this defense here, we can see the Kings, number 1 in the league at limiting points in the restricted area, but they do give it up to outside shooters. Jakob Poeltl does a lot of his work in the restricted area, 70% of his points, but he has been scoring very well, 15.6 points per game on the season, but he only scored 13 points the last time he played the Sacramento Kings in 34 minutes. But for Jakob Poeltl, rebounds could also be a look, but his line's at 11.5. So he's been rebounding extremely well this season, averaging 12 boards per game, which is nuts. But he's had 3 really standout games where he's had ideal matchups. This matchup against the Kings is not ideal for Jakob Poeltl, so I'd probably lean to the under there. If you're looking at Jakob Poeltl, his points and his rebounds. Another interesting look could be this man, Davion Mitchell. And Davion Mitchell, rebounds plus assists, I think that could be a popular play. Or even just looking at his assists straight up, that line's at 6.5. Obviously, if there's no quickly, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. He had 7 assists, but 19 potential assists last time against the Kings. So if the Raptors shoot a bit better, he can probably cash in a lot of these assists. He had 20 potential assists against the Denver Nuggets. So the potential assist volume is very nice for Davion Mitchell. It just comes down to whether they score or not. So that could be an interesting one. But let's get into the last game. It's the Philadelphia 76ers versus the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, we're about to hit an hour, and I can feel it in my throat. So you guys had better like the video. You've better subscribed already. Now, let's get nasty, shall we? Let's talk about James Harden. His point line's at 21.5 here against his old team. He is averaging 21 points per game this season. He's gone under this line in 2 consecutive games, OKC and the Spurs. Not getting the volume up. Is James Harden getting tired, perhaps? That we don't know. But up against the 76ers, his matchup, not really hard, but it's not really easy either. Sixers, not great defensively. But where the Sixers are terrible is pretty much defending that paint area. And James Harden ain't getting to the paint the way he used to. Loves shooting above the break at the moment. And this Philadelphia team, top 8 in the league at defending that area of the floor, with James Harden scoring most of his points. So his matchup somewhat difficult there to score. But the assist prop could come into play. The 76ers bottom 8 in terms of assists allowed. James Harden obviously doing a lot of creating for others, especially if there's a good matchup for points in the paint. You know we're going to talk about Zubac. I think Zubac kills it again. And he could be the person who gets a lot of these assists. Now, the first thing we call out here, similar players. Yusuf Nurkic played the 76ers this season, scored 15 points. He was averaging 9 points per game at the time. Zubac scores almost all of his points in the paint, and you can see on this graph here, the 76ers, terrible at defending in the paint as well. If we look at play types, in the post, pick and roll, getting to the free throw line, All of these are great matchups for Zubac, and I think he can cause some damage here. So I do like his over in points. His rebounds line's at 12.5. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but for points, my man should eat here. I wouldn't be surprised to see him score 20. So in these great matchups, we can do it like this. In the great matchups, well, this is his easiest matchup so far this season if we're talking about in the post. But if we look at points in the paint allowed, you can see it in this graph, right? This blue line, these lines up here, easy matchup. Phoenix, Denver, Golden State. Difficult matchup against Portland, had 6. Up against Phoenix again, 22. Difficult matchup against OKC, had 9. Was a somewhat difficult matchup against San Antonio, and he still scored 17, but he barely covered his line. But now he's up against Philly, where he's got a great matchup. I think Zubac to score some points is fucking fantastic. I like that one too. But now let's talk about these 76ers. We got Paul George, and we've got limited data on Paul George. Scored 15 points in his first game back, 4 for 14 from the field. Paul George, not clear on his play type, but I'm sure it's a whole lot of pick and roll and all that type of bullshit. But ain't nobody betting on Paul George right now. Tyrese Maxey. Now, Tyrese Maxey, I do have a lean on this, but if we talk about his points prop, 27.5 against the Clippers. The Clippers are pretty good in terms of defensive rating, top 7 at the moment. They don't allow many points in the paint, but where they are a little bit weak is above the break, and that's where Tyrese Maxey lives, scores a lot of points out there. So Tyrese Maxey can definitely score some points. What I don't think he does is this, get the assists. So the Clippers, second fewest assists in the league. So we don't like his ability to get the dimes here. He hasn't been getting them anyway. Line at 5.5. This is a very small sample size, but one game with Paul George back in the lineup, Tyrese Maxey had 2 assists in 41 minutes, only 8 potential assists. Paul George is going to kill the ball. Paul George is going to create. So I think it might be difficult for Tyrese Maxey to hit this number. If you look at the under 5.5 assists, you're going to get that for plus money as well. I think that's a real interesting look there for Tyrese Maxey, and I wouldn't hate you if you took the bet. We're getting close to the 1 hour mark, so I had to pull the plug. I also ran out of games to deep dive for you, so hopefully you guys appreciated it. But if you made it this far of the video, it means you got resilience, you love the content. You've been sitting here for almost an hour, and I appreciate you guys. So let me know in the comment section, put in the words 1 hour gang. 1 hour gang, because you made it. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. I appreciate you guys. Best of luck to you, best of luck to me, and best of luck to us. Peace.